Hi, welcome to this session by rootfabric.com, and in today's session we're going to give a basic introduction to Python and cover some concepts in Python. So what is Python? Python is a programming language that's designed to be a more simpler language, but also a more effective language in terms of there's a lot of ways to write the same code in less lines. That's one of the best features about Python. And it tries to make a lot of shortcuts so that code can be written faster. So for example, if you had a block of code that would be executed under an if statement, the only thing that's needed to indicate the block of code that goes with that if statement is indentation. So if I had this, if x is less than 5, and let's just say x is 3, we print 3 messages. Print message 1, message 2, and message 3, and we run. Because x is less than 5, we print all 3 messages. And all of these messages belong to this if statement because they're all indented the same amount. Whereas in C++, what you would need to do is you need to have like curly braces like this to indicate a code block. But Python just skips that by using indentation to indicate code blocks. So what that also means is if I took this out of the code block and then I remove the indentation, let's say x was 12, we run. We only see message 3 because these are in the code block, but this is not in the if statement. So this executes regardless of what this condition evaluates to. So yeah, Python is designed for readability, and it's supposed to be a simpler language. It handles memory management on its own. So just like Java, it's built into the language to handle where variables store their memory and like other things like that. C++ is a language where it's in the control of the user, which allows you to generally you can make code run faster on a computer. A program can run faster on a computer if it's written well in C++, but it's very scary because if you make a mistake in C++, you could have memory leaks. So a memory leak is, let's say I stored this value 12 in X, and I wrote a very complex program, and then there was a memory leak where the 12 showed up somewhere it wasn't supposed to. So if you're on a website or something, and it's written in C++, the program you made, and a random person is on that website, they could see that number 12 pop up at a random location and not have any idea what it is. But they would see the number 12 if there was a memory leak. The reason that's a problem is because if instead of the number 12, this was a social security number, and the social security number pops up randomly, that's important information that can be given to a stranger, which is very, very dangerous. It could be the same thing with like credit card numbers or bank account numbers, stuff like that. So generally for the scarier stuff and the information that's more sensitive, you don't want to write in C++ unless you're very, very good with the language and can make sure there are no memory leaks. And then for the important stuff you want to, or the more sensitive stuff you want to write in something like Java or Python, because that saves a lot of headaches. You don't have to worry about memory leaks because it's built into the language to handle that on its own. So Python can be used for web development on the server side. So if you develop a web application on your computer and you use your computer as a server, people across the internet can access and use your program if your program is running on your computer. It's helpful with applications that deal with a lot of math. So Python's built for a lot of math. It can handle a lot of complex mathematics, and it's good for software development for that stuff. It works well with databases, so SQL is a popular database language that it works well with. Python also works with like a lot of online tools that help build and template web applications. So if you know anything about HTML and like CSS and JavaScript, Python works well with that, and there are applications online that can help you develop your own web applications by templating things for the web like that. Python also works well with big data, which is a very good field to get into right now, because big data is about statistics of information done with very, very large amounts of information. So let's say you had statistics on 100,000 people, like a hospital or something, or maybe something like the stock market or whatever. Python would be a very good language for that, to analyze statistics about lots and lots of information. It also, and it's a very fast language to create software with. So there's a lot of shortcuts built into Python, not just for readability, to make it easier to look at code, like again, the indentation, and also the fact that there's no, in most languages, or a lot of languages, you need a semicolon to indicate the end of a line, but in Python, a line is a line. So once you go to the next line, there doesn't have to be a period or anything indicating the end of a line. A new line indicates the end of the previous line, which it doesn't work that way with other languages. Python also works well on all different operating systems, so like Windows, Mac, and Linux, so it's very flexible. It has a simple syntax. It's based on math and like just the English language. It can be run on an interpreter or a compiler. So a compiler is something that it's usually run on an integrated development environment, an IDE. And IDEs organize code, and if you're compiling or using a compiler, you have to have a completely working program from start to finish before you're allowed to run the program. And if not, the IDE is going to send you error messages. And until you handle those errors, you can't run the program. But the benefit of an interpreter, which Python can use, is that if you have an error, it'll execute all the lines of code up until that error. So let's just say I had a semicolon here. I need x3. That's not going to throw an error. Trying to think of a quick way to throw an error. Okay, so on line 4 we have invalid syntax. So if I wanted to test if x is equal to 5, I would need double equals, because double equals signifies equality and a single equals signifies assignment. So 1 equals means you're setting x equal to 3. You're giving x the value 3, whereas double equals is testing to see if x is equal to 5 here. So if I put the single equals, I get this error because I'm setting x to a new value in here when it's supposed to be evaluating a condition. But if I had some, if I had some messages out here, just say 1 and 2, and we run, and give it a second. I have to refresh the page. It doesn't go. Okay, this is being annoying. Okay, so you see it prints 1, it prints 2, and then on line 7 there's an error. But as opposed to a compiler, which needs the whole program to be working to start executing, an interpreter will run the program until it hits the line where the error is at. So it's very helpful because it helps identify bugs, and it also makes it a lot easier to see how code is working at different points in developing software. So, but Python can also be run on a compiler if you want to organize a much bigger program with a lot more files or much bigger files. Those are usually the situations you'd want to use an IDE in. So, like for example, Eclipse can be used with Python. And Python gets frequent updates. We are in version 3.8 point something, and there are still programs that run on Python 2. But Python gets updates all the time to improve the language and make it more user-friendly, and allow you more options and flexibility when you're creating programs in Python. Python can also be treated in multiple ways. So the most popular and most used languages are usually object-oriented languages, meaning everything about the language surrounds objects, how they're created, and functions that use variables within those objects. So if you know about classes in coding, a class is a user-created object, so you can create your own functions and your own variables that belong to that object. And then you can create different instances of that object. So if you created like a person class, you could give it a couple of variables like name, height, weight, and then functions that operate on those variables. And then every time you create a new person, you could give each person a name, a height, and a weight, and then invoke functions that operate on that. So yeah, that's a very basic introduction to what Python is and what it's good for. If you want to check out more about Python, you can check out our courses at rootfabric.com, and I hope this was helpful. Thanks. Bye.